Well, thanks everyone for hanging out with us today. We've got a second set of session with lots of speakers from Southern Cross, University of Montana Western, Western Sydney University, and Victoria University. And at the end, if we still have some people around, we'll introduce you to some regional committee goings on with IBILTA. So going to introduce Liz Goode from Southern Cross University. They've done amazing work at Southern Cross. And just as a plug, both Thomas Roche and Erica Wilson are our co-presidents for IBILTA, and that just happened at our AGM recently. So Liz is going to present on their behalf as well, on the whole team's behalf. Thanks, Liz. Welcome.
Thanks, Pushpa, and good morning, everyone. I'm from Coffs Harbour in Australia. I apologise for having my camera off a bit this morning. It is the morning school rush, which I know some of you would be well familiar with, but it's been great listening into all the presentations so far. I've really enjoyed it. So I am presenting here on behalf of my colleagues, Professor Thomas Roche and Professor Erica Wilson. And I wasn't lucky enough to be at the IBILTA conference. I couldn't go this year. So again, it's been just so lovely to be able to hear some of those presentations that I missed, but hopefully this is informative for those who were there and those who were not as well. So I'm from Southern Cross Uni. Like Victoria University, we have implemented a block model across our whole institution. And something that I think is really important when you think about renewing curriculum, revitalising the way that you teach and learn, is to think about who your students are. So I always like to start with a bit of a snapshot of who our students are at Southern Cross, because that really drove our decision to move away from semesters and into what we call immersive blocks at our university. So we've got 3 main campuses, 6 branch campuses, some offshore partners as well. But we have that you know, and I don't particularly like this term, but for lack of a better one at the moment, we have a non-traditional sort of student cohort, especially compared to the more traditional, long-standing, maybe metropolitan universities in Australia. Most of our students are women. They study part-time. Around half of our students are online as well, so not coming in face-to-face. We tend to have older, mature-age learners, around 20% international as well, and a large proportion of first-in family students, and 5% First Nation students or Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander is quite high in the sector, and it exceeds population proportions in Australia as well. So that's something we're really proud of, and we have a Guinevere College of Indigenous Australian peoples at our university as well. So these are the students who we serve at Southern Cross, and we identified around 5 or 6 years ago now that we weren't doing such a good job of helping these students persist and stay in and graduate through to completion. And that was a big motivation for why are we going to think about upending our entire academic delivery model and moving into a block model. What we eventually landed on after a period of consultation and great deal of discussion and thought, as I'm sure many of you have been through yourselves, is what we're calling the Southern Cross model. We do block a little bit differently to other institutions in that we have a 2 unit at a time model. So not that traditional, I use the word traditional, it sounds a bit strange when talking about block, but instead of 1 unit at a time, students enroll in a maximum of 2 if they're full-time and study over 6-week terms. Most of our students will study from March to October, as they would have done in our traditional semester or trimester model, so they're not sort of with us for a longer period over a calendar year, but there is the option to enroll in up to 6 6-week terms per year. And the standard full-time study load that most students do is 8 units over 4 terms a year. So that's our model of learning that we've instituted at Southern Cross Uni. In terms of pedagogy and process, so we've heard a few times how important it is to think about the whole curriculum, to have a really student-centered approach to your redesign, not just a calendar change, but what are our pedagogical foundations, what kinds of experiences do we want students to have in a block model. For us, and this will probably have quite a bit of overlap with many of you, our focus has been to try and design learning in a block model format that is firstly focused appropriately. So there's been a big emphasis on constructive alignment and thinking carefully about cognitive load through our unit redesign and course redesign processes. Guided learning is a big emphasis for us, particularly in the context of blended and fully online learning. I think I mentioned earlier, roughly half of our students are fully online, and the rest of our students really do desire that flexibility, given that they tend to be older working students with families. So we want to ensure, though, that they have this guided experience, that they're not sort of left at sea wondering what to do when. So a lot of attention has been paid to sequencing and scaffolding and signposting what's important and why it's important through our curriculum. And finally, active learning, which I'm sure many of you are well familiar with. So we have media-rich online learning modules. We try to make these as interactive and responsive as possible. And in terms of both our online and our on-campus experiences, we hope that they encourage a sense of community of inquiry, where you can feel empowered and safe to have dialogue and conversations and discussions and solve problems about what you're learning, rather than simply take in the expert view. So our journey has been a long one. 2021, we piloted our Southern Cross model. 2022, the bulk of the university moved over into the Southern Cross model. In 2023, we had our last disciplines, health, law, and our hotel school move across into the model. So over 900 units were redeveloped across the whole university, and 2023 onwards, our whole uni has been in the Southern Cross model. So what you may have heard from some of your colleagues and from around, the sector, sometimes when you bring up block, you have people pop up and they say, oh, that's great, but it will never work in our discipline. Discipline says no. Block model learning, what we try to teach and learn and how we do it, that is not going to happen for us. So we've heard this a lot. And it has been a bit of a hurdle for us to kind of ride through and to change some perspectives on, because we went with a whole institution redesign into block model. So we have to make it work for every discipline of study. And so we looked at some of those metrics that are important for probably all of us in terms of demonstrating impact and student outcomes. We looked at student success or pass rates and unit satisfaction, and those outcomes across 9, what we call in the Australian context, fields of education, so sort of disciplinary clusters, which are standardised by the Australian government. And we looked at those outcomes before in the traditional semester model and after in our 6-week block model. And we looked at matched pairs of units, so only those units that were offered pre and post. And we looked at them in 2019 in the traditional model, which was the last sort of business as usual year. And then we looked at the outcomes across 2021 and 2023 in the block model. So what sort of findings came out of that analysis? This is based on a paper that we have a preprint that's available now, and we hope very soon a publication as well. It's just in the late stages of being published in a journal. So success rates, looking across these 9 fields of education, we saw a statistically significant increase in success or pass rates across 7 of the 9 disciplines. Those first 7 you can see there. Agriculture and engineering were 2 disciplines in which we did not see a significant increase in success. Some of the increases were quite large: natural and physical sciences, society and culture, infotech, creative arts, and some of them were less so. So health and education had sort of significant but not large increases in their success rates. So this looks like, on the surface, it's quite a positive initial story. When we delved into satisfaction, though, things became a little bit more complex. So you can see, if you look at for the little asterisks, there are only 3 disciplines in which there was a significant change in unit satisfaction. So students saying, overall, I'm satisfied with my units. That was in creative arts, which went down, engineering and related technologies, which went down quite a lot, and management and commerce, which rose. The other disciplines, despite the ups and downs, we didn't find any significant change in our data. So I think this speaks to one of the complexities of major curriculum reform, whether it be block or not, and that we saw this kind of strange decoupling of success rates going up, but satisfaction, students sort of weren't perceiving that they were having as satisfactory learning experiences, particularly in some of the disciplines here. So a little bit of a complex story sort of has started to emerge for us around student outcomes. So with the benefit of hindsight, though, we're now a couple of years past 2023. This data was collected a couple of years ago now. So what we've been able to see since then, oh, sorry, I forgot that I had this slide sort of unpacking that a little bit. So I'll just backtrack for a minute. This might be familiar to many of you who have sort of thought about, well, what are the pros and cons and the complexities of implementing a block model? The things that students say work really well in the Southern Cross model: focus, motivation, manageability, and flexibility. And particularly that flexibility aspect is not so much that carousel model of being able to pick and choose units, but around being able to engage with online asynchronous learning opportunities and some synchronous learning opportunities as well. So these are some things that we found students find quite positive about the block model. On the other side, we find students saying that they feel like they are learning at a surface level, focusing on assessments only. It's just, what do I need to do for the assessment, and then move on without having that sort of richer sense of learning. Workload comes up a bit as well. The idea of keeping pace when something goes wrong in your life. How do I keep up if I've lost 1 out of 6 or 1 out of 4 weeks? And for us at our institution, again, with that blended approach, peer engagement has been a little bit of a stumbling block for us in terms of students not feeling like they're interacting a lot with their peers. So just to unpack very briefly, some of those drivers of satisfaction may be going up or down across those different disciplines. But back to the sort of longer term picture and what we can sort of see with the benefit of a little bit of hindsight now and more long-term data. We're now 2 years post 2023, and thankfully what we have seen across our institution is that satisfaction, both unit and teaching, has gone up quite significantly. So I think for us, the idea of resting on your laurels and continuous improvement has come up a lot. And we've certainly sort of seen that introducing the block model wasn't necessarily a magic bullet for suddenly all our metrics were amazing, but over time, reflection, continuous refinement, I think we're certainly getting there. And engineering, that discipline that was way down, has come up to just under 90% in their satisfaction as well. So I think one of the things from our story is the importance of that long-term data and also continual reflection and improvement as well. And another aspect for us is we've also seen rising success over time and falling attrition over time, which has been really, really important for us. So key takeaways, we have seen an uplift to student success across those diverse disciplines. So I don't think you can say, especially looking at that longer term data, that block learning is inherently unsuitable for particular fields of study. We've seen it work across many, many different disciplines. However, we did have initially poorer outcomes in some disciplines. In our case, it was engineering compared to others. We did find that satisfaction was more difficult to shift during the transition, and we call this kind of a transition effect, where that change was very discombobulating, particularly for students who moved from traditional into block during the course of their program. However, we've seen a strong uptick in recent years. So, radical holistic reform, I think, takes time and refinement and continual improvement. So if you're interested in reading more, we try to publish as much as we can, and we'd love you to read some of our work if you find interesting and you have time. But thank you very much. I hope that was not too long, Pushpa, but happy to take questions.
That was fantastic, Liz. Thank you so much for sharing. Any questions for Liz? Ona?
Liz, thank you very much for this presentation. It's very interesting and full of data. And my question is actually about the data that you collected. Did you use institutional data to prepare this presentation? Because I saw that you are referring to BIR, or a combination of institutional data plus student experience survey, quilt data?
Yeah, both. So thank you, Ona, for the question. Institutional data, so everything that we collect in terms of student outcomes we get from our business intelligence and quality unit, but also that internal quilt data, so our regular student satisfaction survey that goes out at the end of the teaching period. That's where the satisfaction data came from. We didn't design our own separate survey for that. Yeah, so I hope that answers. Thank you.
Sam?
Hi Liz, thanks for the talk. I just put my question in the chat too, but how are you addressing the student feedback that you're getting that some of them feel like they're not getting that deeper level of learning and more surface level learning?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's an ongoing process. So I think, again, that reflection of, well, is our curriculum a little bit too cluttered here, or even quite a bit too cluttered? I think in the initial transition, that idea of lift and shift has come up a lot, and that did happen, I think, in some of our units. We're all under a lot of time pressure. You can't always reimagine your curriculum in the way that you'd like to in the very beginning. And I'm sure many of you have seen that, and I think we did experience some of that as well. So continually reflecting on what can I take out of this curriculum to make it more focused and scaffolded such that students do achieve those learning outcomes. We try to limit our assessment tasks to 3 per unit, and I know that some disciplines have gone back to 2. Over and under assessment has come up a little bit this morning or this evening. So we've tried to find that balance, and we're in the process of going through a bit of a shift towards programmatic assessment as well, where we might have less graded tasks and more of a program level approach to assessment. So ongoing process, but yeah, I think it's just coming back to that reflection on constructive alignment, cognitive load. Am I over under assessing? What can I do about that? Thanks, Sam. David, I think.
Yeah.
Thanks, Liz. Good to see you again as well.
Yes.
Liz, your commentary on online students, you have a large cohort of online students. My question is about, do you treat, what's the word, do you teach them differently? Like, are your online classes just for online students, or do you have a blended approach? And in the metrics that you talked about, is there a difference between the online students and the face-to-face students?
Yeah, great question. So we do blend them somewhat. So in all of our units, typically what happens is you have a tutorial, and they are broken up according to your mode of enrollment. So there'll be classes for the online students, tutorial classes, and there'll be separate tutorial classes for the on-campus students. There are some exceptions to that where we have hybrid classrooms. In law, for example, they have hybrid teaching sometimes where the online and the on-campus students will come together in the one tutorial class. But the second type of class that usually sits alongside the tutorials are workshops. They're fully online, and all of the on-campus and the online students come together into the workshops. They're just 1 hour long, and they're designed for those things that you want a whole cohort to hear, like unpacking an assessment task, going through rubrics, exemplars, things like that. So a bit of a mix, yeah, separate tutorials, except in the case of hybrid classes, and they all come together for their weekly workshop as well.
Do they have the same, across the subject, do they have the same amount, same length of face-to-face time? Or do the online students tend to have more asynchronous time?
It depends. I mean, I suppose attendance come up a few times this morning as well. So in terms of timetabling, they have the exact same time. But we do find, as you might appreciate, that there's less synchronous attendance that happens among the online cohort than the face-to-face cohort. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.
Last question from John.
Thanks, Liz. Look, interesting you say about students saying that they miss the rich experience when they weren't purely assessment focused on the semester model. I think that's what we would call that in literature, the yearning for the golden age that never existed. I think that's the same kind of thinking, and please don't get me wrong here, that you know, drives Marga, this idea that there was once a perfect time. And I would love to somehow investigate that idea that the semester model is somehow richer, and that students on the semester model didn't just work towards the assessments, because I think they did. Just they did it. They wouldn't turn up to class for 4 weeks, then they'd all come when assessment 1 is due. Then they wouldn't turn up, then they'd all come when assessment 2 is due. So I think there's a potential for that yearning for the deep, rich experience of the semester to be unpacked as just another myth. I don't think there was a different kind of learning then. I think there was there was a different model, but not necessarily a different learning approach. Anyway, that's my 2 bits.
Yeah, no, John, that's really interesting. Thank you. And I tend to agree. And it's a different orientation towards time, I think, or perceptions of time in block model learning and traditional semester model learning. And, students often seem to forget that when we're comparing them, it's like 4 at a time versus for us 2 at a time. And they just kind of forget that and think, oh, 6 weeks is so much harder than 12 weeks sometimes. But yeah, it's just interesting, their perceptions of time and what used to happen, what happens now. And how that all sort of gets a little bit, warped sometimes in thinking about the golden age and all the benefits of that. Thank you.
True. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz, for joining us today. Great work.